Good morning, everybody. My name's Lloyd Stokes. I work and I run a business called Sourced. I struggle with that actually. This is who I am and this is what I do. We were just talking about that. I run a business called Sourced. Sourced is a business we've been in operation for 10 years, and we help early stage and scaling technology companies to hire and find amazing permanent and fractional talent to help them scale their growth. Sourced Presents is our podcast. We launched it about 18 months ago, and the purpose of launching it was I like to think that I have a quite interesting network of people, and certainly as this journey evolves, I get to meet lots and lots of really cool people who come from completely different walks of life, different backgrounds. They live in different parts of the world. They have different roles, responsibility, but they all are connected to that ecosystem of technology companies and predominantly kind of scaling businesses, whether they be, we've interviewed SDRs, we've interviewed CROs, we've interviewed sales enablement. There's lots of, but we get into the detail, hopefully, of the story and the background of that person, what they've done, what they're doing now, what they've learnt, and hopefully the idea is that people who listen into this podcast can take away some key points at the end of every single interview that we do that make them think differently, potentially act differently, and maybe make new connections. Today, the episode is with a fairly new contact within my network. Aaron is somebody that I was actually connected to through Martin Sutton, who we've done loads of work with over the last 18 months. And Aaron's background really stood out as being, I think, quite unique. And he doesn't know that I'm going to say this, but it is rare. There's a nervous laugh there. There's a nervous laugh there, but there shouldn't be. Aaron's background is having worked and had really two long successful stints in organisations that have led to him being where he is today. And it's increasingly rare, I find, to meet people who have that journey. Tenure is something that is talked about a lot within organisations. People look to move a lot. I find myself increasingly talking to candidates who reach out to me and say, I'm looking to move. And I almost push back and say, why? Like, don't do that. Stay where you are. Like, you don't need to move. What you're looking for, you're probably going to find. And that probably sounds counterintuitive for the business that I run, but yeah, there's a purpose to what I do, and I do believe wholeheartedly in giving people really honest advice based on knowledge and experience. And sometimes that advice is stay where you are. So Aaron's background predominantly covers two businesses where he had huge amounts of success, and that led him on to launching most recently his own coaching business. And he's involved in a number of different projects that I've only recently discovered some of the things that he's done, but like super interesting background. And now, as I say, helping to coach people and helping to coach salespeople, and not just the classic high performance approach, but what I really love about Aaron's approach, and also I think where we're really aligned in terms of our journeys and our purpose, is that there's more to it than just high performance. It's around creating the life and the environment that you want to, of your dreams, I guess. So career, health, wealth, everything, and really getting all of those things together. So that hopefully gives you a bit of context. Today we're going to be talking about Aaron's journey, his background, what he's done, what he does now, and delving more into that coaching piece and starting to understand whether actually everybody does need a coach, whether nobody needs a coach. If they do, what they need, and what's the upside and potentially what's the downside as well. So I always talk too much at the beginning of these, but hopefully that's enough from me for the moment. Aaron, thank you so much for being part of this and for joining me for the interview. I think to start with, it would be really good just to get a bit of the kind of origin story from you and where you've worked, what you've done, and what led you to be doing what you are doing today.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to talk today. But also thank you for, I think, the first time in my life putting me in a category of cool people. So the fact that that is captured, that's going to be on, where you get your podcasts. My work is done. I'm already happy. So this has been a great success for me. And in terms of my origin and my background, as you rightly said, I spent the majority of my career at two wonderful organizations in the tech space, Computer Center and then AWS, part of the Amazon group. And I had what I believe was more success than I ever possibly could have imagined, all the way through climbing the ranks from graduate through to principal account exec at AWS. But I think I was very similar to most people in the industry, that I was winning deals, I was climbing the ladder, getting promotions, but really that by subscribing to that hustle culture of, if I work really hard, if I train more than anybody, then I will be successful. I was that person that was sending the early emails at silly o'clock, and if I was traveling and I was staying over in a hotel, that was more opportunity to work. And that did reap a lot of rewards in terms of customers we won, the deals we won, the brand and the recognition that I would get at both organizations in terms of what my future would look like. But then, especially as I became a father, and I became a father just before the UK went into lockdown, when COVID had hit our shores a couple of months before that. And I know that COVID was a terrible thing, but if it didn't happen, I wouldn't have had this breakthrough and this realization, because we all started working from home, as we are now, at our desks, hybrid working. We all transitioned to working from home. And what that meant was that I didn't just have some paternity leave and then just return back to the way of working that I'd always lived by, which was, I live in Manchester in the north of the UK, hopping on that red-eye train down to London and probably spending most weeks Monday to Thursday down there. That was the life of a tech salesperson, and that's what was required to be successful. But because of COVID, the silver lining for me and all the terrible things that happened was, I was in the house with my boy, my family, every single day. When I took a break, when I had my lunch, when I finished for the day, and when I got up in the morning, I saw him every day, and I was there with my wife. And I realized that when this terrible thing that is COVID goes away, I don't want to go back to that way of working. I want to be present in his life like I am now, take him to football after school, after I finish work and finish early on a particular day. But when I looked around the industry, there were so many role models in terms of high performance, like you mentioned, people that have skyrocketed up the corporate ladder, earned astronomical amounts of money, and built these reputations of being successful salespeople and transitioned into leaders. So there's an abundance of these types of people in the tech industry. But what I couldn't find anywhere was somebody or some persons where, yes, they've killed it in the tech industry, in sales specifically, but they're also killing it in other areas that were really important to me, such as health and fitness. I've grown up playing football. I'm big into my cycling, running. I'm bang average at absolutely all of these things. I've never had a chance at breaking into a football academy or anything like that, or becoming a professional athlete. But then also I've been brought up with a real close family orientated culture, and friends are really important to me. And especially, again, being based outside of London, where in the UK tech is very London centric. That's the heartbeat of the British economy. Is how can I couldn't find those role models where they kind of, if you think about the Venn diagram of those three things, I couldn't see it anywhere. So I realized that I had to become my own role model. I had to do things differently. So I changed the way that I was going to operate, with intention and purpose, with that drive and that goal behind the goal of, designing the life before designing the career and executing the career. And these were simple but really impactful changes in terms of not just thinking about my career and my career goals, but thinking about my career as one very important pillar in the overall picture and vision for my life. Then also stepping away from that culture of hustle and, you know, trying to show up and be this, you know, always on person, which is so hard, especially in enterprise sales, where you're expected to pick up the phone, you're expected to check your email when you're on holiday, is completely unsubscribing to that and really doubling down only on the things that really mattered. And I talk about this with my clients, where I favor now courage over compliance. I always wanted to be green from a quota perspective, of course, but I also wanted to be green from a, is Aaron completing all of his training on time? Is Aaron doing this, doing that? You know, green across the board, which I think being green across the board doesn't get you fired, but it doesn't help you achieve great things. And there were some other small changes, but fundamentally transformational for me, that enabled me not only to, you know, soar in my career, achieve great things, but it also helped me realize what I wanted to do going forwards, which I'm sure we'll get into that in terms of now I'm no longer a coach, but also outside of my professional life. When I made these changes, not only did I earn 3 times as much money, get back-to-back promotions, with my biggest deal ever is I got into the shape of my life. I ran a relatively quick marathon. I took on other endurance initiatives and competitions and succeeded with those. And we completely rebuilt a house from scratch to create our dream home, all topped off with I've never had more time traveling and time off from work. So they were the biggest
just
picture wins for me.
I just find that story, that time. So for me, if I compare, just to share a bit on the flip side, I live in the southeast, so I'm within commuting distance of London, albeit certainly when I started commuting to London, it was still a slow train. I'm about 75 miles outside of London, so 75 is very specific, isn't it? But no, I'm good. That tells you how many times I did it, because I worked out how far I was.
The details are important, Lloyd.
Yeah, exactly. So I spent 10 years commuting, and for the first 7 of those 10 years, it was an hour and a half each way on the train. It was about an hour and 40 each way from door to door. So 3.5 hours a day traveling. And then in the last 3 years, the high-speed line was built, and so that reduced it to about an hour and 15, but still 2.5 hours of your day. And I actually worked out at one point that I was spending a month of every year just traveling to and from work, which was not the best statistic for me to know. Anyway, the point is that I remember the reason for me setting up my own business, and I talked a lot about this a few years ago on a podcast, was, you know, at the time it wasn't necessarily about me wanting to launch this incredible, massive, high-performing recruitment business. I just actually was sat on the train with the same people around me, looking at these people who are 10, 15, 20 years older than me, who I didn't know, because no one ever talks on the train on the commute. You just look at it and you recognise the same faces. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be that person in 10 years from now. And it was such a clear thought that I had in my head. And I was like, how do I change that? Well, the way that I changed that is that, and at the time, obviously it's pre-COVID, so it's 5 days a week in the office. There's no flexible working. So that was the catalyst for me changing and I just wanted to find more balance and have a way to be able to own that myself. And that took me, you know, off in a different direction, but that was it. Yeah, that was fundamentally it. So I completely get that. Just to cover a bit around your kind of sales career, if we could, why what made you, or why did you get into sales? What was the hook for you?
I never thought that I was going to be a salesperson. I'm pretty sure that at least 100 people early in my career had said to me, the last thing you will ever do, Aaron, is sales. So if I wind the clock, go all the way back, this is like therapy now. You know, we're going deep. When I was in school, I always did really well at school, but again, I will outwork everybody else. I never felt like I had God-given talents or just the ability to wing it with charisma. But one of the things that I was fundamentally scared of was speaking up in class, when people looking at me. The thought of, in the future, public speaking just filled me with dread. As an example, some people in class would put their hands up and answer a question and get a little bit embarrassed. Mine went to the next level, where if I knew the answer and I thought that the teacher was going to ask me the question, even if they weren't going to ask me the question, I would go crimson red with the prospect of having to either read in class or speak out. Therefore, I was never, ever set to go into sales, and I actually started my tech career initially in an analyst role and then into project management. And the reason why it was junior level project management, the reason I went into that is I failed after uni getting into a management consultancy graduate scheme. That was my mindset. I've always thought I want to have my own business in the future. And my pathway and what I thought was going to get me there was go and work for one of the big four, the PwCs, the Deloittes, become a management consultant, go into all these different businesses around the world, change their fortunes, redesign their operating models, learn how to not run a business and how to run a business. And then I'll take all of that experience and I'll create my own. That was the mentality. But I couldn't get in. I don't even think I got through any of the first phases of their entry process, to the point once I was telephone interviewed by, I won't name which organisation it was to respect them, and I think they hadn't ever spoken to somebody from the north of Manchester before in their life, frankly. And the feedback I got was, this person is driven, I think they've got high potential, but we can't get past the fact that he spoke in slang. Now, I can assure you I never spoke in slang. However, that was one of the reasons why, and I think that was just they lived in the city, they never really spoken to somebody with a broad accent like mine. And what that led me to was, okay, just knuckle down on what I'm doing right now in this tech organisation, doing project management. And then one day I had an appraisal with my boss, and she told me, she said, you're young, you're flying, you're moving really quickly. If you keep progressing at this pace, by the time you are 40, you will earn £100,000 salary. And I sat there and thought, well, that's pretty good. Yeah, that is okay. And I walked away, I was smiling at that point, thinking, I've done well. I've got tick, tick, tick against my name. My career's moving forwards. And then in the kitchenette, where all the different teams up in the Manchester office would, meet, catch up over coffee, you form bonds with people your own age and that type of thing. I had a conversation with somebody who was in the sales team, and I shared this feedback. And he turned around and said to me, if you came and worked in the sales team, you'd probably earn that by the time you are 25.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was just coin operated and it just being all about the money. It was also how that conversation developed, where I started to understand that not only could you earn a lot more money, but the CEOs of companies, the CMOs, often come from that customer facing, that sales background. And at that point, even though I had all of these doubts about my ability to save this, sell this pen, Wolf of Wall Street style, I looked at it and thought, well, if thousands of people can do it, then I can apply myself, just like I've done, work as hard as anybody, work harder on all the things that are required, and I will get a sales job and I will be successful. So that's how I transitioned into sales, even though I still don't believe I'm a natural salesperson. But I also think that's one of my greatest strengths is I'm, as an account exec selling technology or services, or as a coach, I'm only trying to sell to the people that I genuinely believe I can help, that I can work with, that want to work with me. So it's 100% authentic, which I think is powerful. That's when you get a transition, a movement of an emotional decision versus people that might have all the skills, the tricks, the methodologies to try and manipulate people into a sale. I think there's fundamentally so much more power in that sincere approach and obsessing and serving that person in front of you or persons rather than I'm going to train myself to be really good at sales in order to get the outcome I want.
It's funny, isn't it? Because the characteristics and the profile of what makes a successful technology salesperson. Actually, I would use our industry as well. So in recruitment, the skills and requirements needed today, or that are prized, I think, today by forward-thinking organisations, are very different to the ones that were valued and prized 15, 16, 17 years ago when I started my career. That's for sure. In recruitment, there was and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the environment that we were in when I joined. But it was very much around we're selling. We're selling to companies to get them to give us jobs. We're selling to candidates to persuade them to go into those jobs. We're selling them through the interview process, but we're constantly selling. And it's interesting because I don't think anyone really understood at the time what that meant. They were just told that we were selling. That's what we're doing. We're selling. So we're just trying to convince, I think, is really another way of putting it. We were trying to convince Aaron that this company that we're recruiting for is the best company and the role's amazing, and just as long as we get them into that interview, then they've got a chance of getting the job. And if I speak to enough people like Aaron, then I'll get some people into that job. That was the environment certainly that I started in, which is not to badmouth the company I worked for. It's just that's what everyone was doing. If I fast forward that to the last few years, and I think that one of the privileges that I have and that we have as a business is working with some really interesting, very forward-thinking technology companies who they've really started to understand in a lot more detail what are the characteristics of a high-performing person or a high-performing team, and how they vary and they need to be diverse, and just having an environment where everyone's the same as it is in all team environments generally doesn't work. But what I've understood is that in recruitment, some of the best people that I've hired in the last few years, I don't think if you ask them, do you sell? Is there any element of what you do which is selling? They say, no, I'm not a salesperson. I don't sell. Because the qualities required in our industry now are you have to be unbelievable at understanding your client or your customer. You have to really be able to get into the weeds of what is it that you've not got right so far, and how can we help? What are the real characteristics that you're looking to find? You have to be incredibly diligent in your process of identifying the right people and assessing the right people, and spending a lot of time listening to them when you're interviewing them to really get to the point of going. The goal for us is when you finish that call and say, right, I really feel like they'd be a great fit for that business based on this list. And it's changed a lot. I really think it has. When you alluded to this a little bit earlier when you spoke, but at Computer Center, when you made that decision to move into sales, what was the environment like? What was it? When you looked at the people there, the team, and what they'd created, was it that always on, that classic sales environment that we've talked about already?
I say this so often. I have such a strong affection for the company Computer Center, the people there. If you look, you mentioned about my tenure. When you look at my LinkedIn, I was there for 11 years. that's a drop in the ocean compared to the tenure that you see at that organisation. It's something unique that Mike and the team and the founders of Computing have built as a culture where people join as graduates and stay for 30 plus years and become the future GMs and managing directors and CEOs. You don't get that anywhere else. There was this incredible collectively competitive yet family orientated style culture. So everybody was hungry to win. Everybody was hungry to compete. But you had so much support. You would get questions from your manager that, the first thing they'd ask you is, are you learning? Are you earning? And are you having fun? I'm pretty sure I've stole that off one of the managing directors that I worked under. But they sincerely meant it. And if you weren't earning, they would not first of all drill into the data and look at your performance with the question mark of, is this person good enough? First of all, they'd be thinking about what's getting in the way of this person earning, because they wouldn't be in that role. They wouldn't have got through the graduate scheme or the associate program, which is so tough to get into, but then it's so thorough as a process once you come out of it. And equally, who they hire externally, the first question is, what do we need to get out of their way? How do we need to create a more successful environment? You did have highly ambitious and focused people that were always on and were going from one massive deal to the next one, and they inspired me, and they still inspire me. And you need to have that laser-like vision and that ambition to be able to go and win global brands and win multi-million-dollar deals. You do need that. And I don't, just because I wanted to forge a different path doesn't mean I'm looking at anybody and saying, you've done it wrong. That's your way. Only that person can answer the inner question of whether they're happy as a result. I imagine that a lot of people are, and maybe some people thinking, maybe I've sacrificed too much in, I've said no in other areas of my life where if I had another opportunity, maybe I would do it differently. But I would say, just to wrap all of that up, I was surrounded by really capable, supportive, ambitious people. Fundamentally, Computing doesn't make a software product. It doesn't build any hardware. Yeah, I genuinely believe that it has some of the best salespeople and sales leaders in the world, and that's why it's grown from what it was to, now it's taken over the States, and EMEA has always been really strong, and Asia Pac is growing too. So I walked into that and I realised there's standards here, and if Aaron Norris is going to be successful, when people doubt me as a salesperson from the beginning, and I know that people doubted me, then I have to raise my bar even higher in terms of those standards.
I'm curious to think about if we kind of move forward into the present day and the coaching that you deliver. And I said, I was remember when we first spoke, I looked at one of your LinkedIn posts, and you career, health and wealth was one of the lines, and I really just like the idea of trying to prioritize all of those things, and not saying that saying that you can do it all. That was the overriding impression that I got before we'd ever spoken, was it's possible to have everything. You don't need to you don't need to do this. But I think that it's probably easier, and I think that's why I'm aligned, because that's what I think I'm trying to pursue. And I think that there's an element, for me anyway, of age and children and having those factors. You said one of the key drivers. I get that completely. Having children is one of the most, for me, the most profound thing that's ever happened in my life. That's made me rethink the way that I work. And actually, one of my old bosses said to me, "You'll never work as hard as you do when you have children." And there is some
was
truth
right.
in that.
He or she were right.
Yeah. He was definitely right. In all aspects, and work not just on the career but just in life, and that's right. But do you think it's possible to just to have this way of thinking and to do you think you need to be at a certain point in your life to take this approach, and as we are maybe, or do you think that you could be in your early 20s and still have this approach? Because I'll leave the question there, and what do you think?
It's a fascinating question, and my mind's gone in a completely different direction to how I thought I would answer this question. An idea just was born where, when you and I and earlier generations were at the early stages of their careers, society, and especially the British culture of work hard, get a job, get on the property ladder, big drinking culture in the UK, especially if you're going to go and work in the city in these big organisations, you not only got to do a good job, you've got to play the part as well. You've got to be at the events, you've got to be able to go and have the beers. So when I look at this and I historically look at the situation, I would think back in the day, maybe it would have been really difficult, or people would have had to have a reason, a health scare or some form of breakthrough or epiphany to go, this needs to stop. Like I did. Yep. It's only a subtle one. Everyone goes through the transition of becoming a parent if they choose to start a family. But I think the younger generation now is different. They are so health conscious already before they even start university, get into university, get into their careers, probably driven by social media and the fact that we're all on display, we're all putting ourselves out into the world. But when I think about Aaron Norris and my friends and everybody else at university and the life we lived there, and then what the early parts of our careers look like, and when I speak to family members or friends that are at university now, it's fundamentally different. There's been this change from a drinking culture to a health culture. I didn't know what macros were, or if I went to the gym, it was just like do some bicep curls, and if you go on a run until you're tired. Whereas there's so much information out there now, and the younger generation are so clued into how to look good. You can't out-train a bad diet. So I don't actually think that they will need to go through this change. I think some of those core components will be there. They will face a different challenge where, okay, they've got the health and fitness side of things nailed down before they even go into the workplace, but then they are so used to consuming everything through phones, laptops, rapidly finding information through social media and AI and ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these great tools that are coming out. The biggest challenge will be, how do you then adapt to a workplace and achieve and build your brand in person? Not just on LinkedIn and online, but how do you do that in person with customers? Because the buyer-seller partnership relationship now is completely different. All those things that I've just said have been in the hands of the younger generation from a health and fitness perspective, but they're also in the hands of the buyer now, where they can do rapid research. They can find out who the best players are and the upcoming players are in the market. So they're almost in a more advanced and stronger position where they don't want to talk to the salesperson anymore to find out how much it costs, what it does, why you. They've already formulated that picture and then said, right, you come to the table at the end of this process, which therefore makes the job of the seller so much harder. How do you get into their decision-making process? How do you influence the emotional decision, which inevitably happens, as we know, before the logic and the rationale? So I think that it's a very long-winded way of answering your question and probably going in a completely different direction, but that was the first thing that came into mind. And I think there's a unique challenge that people will face when they think about those three pillars. I think I had two pillars that I wanted to level up in terms of standards with my career pillar. But I think maybe the next generation or the current generation, those pillars, certainly health and fitness, maybe are already higher. It's how do they accelerate their career? How do they balance this with their social communities and those types of things?
I think you're right. I think there's definitely a my next question, and I'll come on to it in a minute, but I do think that there's a real challenge that I see with a younger generation who naturally are just automatically prioritizing I don't know if holistic is the right word, but just they're not just, it's not just career. It's not just I need to work as hard as I can to make as much money to be able to your point, buy my first house. That is an element of what they do, but it is not necessarily the thing that defines them, because they want to be able to have more balance and are way more considerate. The challenge, I think, is potentially in leadership and having businesses and teams led by different generations, typically older generations, who maybe haven't seen the light, or just they have a different view. And I see a lot of disconnect sometimes with that, with hiring leaders, hiring people who just have an alternative approach to how they want to build their career. And it's not a lack of ambition. It's not a lack of drive. It's not a lack of application necessarily. It's just not being done in the same way as that leader did when they were at that stage in their career. Do you see that as a challenge? So with the people that you coach, how easy is it for them to take the learnings and implement it into the companies that they currently work in?
I think the hardest thing for anyone is taking action, doing things differently, fundamentally changing the way that you think. Because the power of the coach is that the coach is your external eyes and ears. They see something with a unique perspective. They are observing you, how you're behaving, what you're holding back from, what you are telling yourself versus the reality. And all the sales tactics, strategies, methodologies, even the new ones that come out, they're just a rehash of things that have been there in either in a different application, or they've just been rebadged, slightly evolved. All that information and all those tactics are out there for any seller to go and read, learn, apply. But it's the apply piece that is really, really difficult. And what I find with my clients, but not just my clients, I speak to many sales professionals, ICs, leaders, company founders, executives, even outside of the tech industry, which is really interesting how some of the challenges are the same, is that the problem they perceive, or the problem they come to me with, I want to build a bigger pipeline, I don't have executive presence, my team aren't doing what they need to do, there's not enough activity. It's never the problem, because they know what the answers to those problems are.
They can find the
they can go and find. If they don't know, they don't need to pay me or another coach. They can go and read the books on building a massive pipeline and go and take action. But often it is something that is holding them back, whether it be a confidence or a belief, or often a fear of, if I do this, what does it mean? Or sometimes they don't actually want what they think they want. They're in sales, but they don't actually want to be that salesperson. What it will take to be successful isn't what they really want. And that's what I found fascinating about coaching. And I don't really, unless I have to, describe myself as a sales coach, because I think it's true coaching. It is personal, one-to-one coaching, working with that person to unlock that potential, break through that barrier that then enables them to go and use all of these tools and strategies. There's never been more tools, and it's never been easier to find the information. And when we find that and they change that and they take the action, that's when incredible things happen. And it's why I take it all the way back to designing the life, building the vision for you and your life before you think about, how do I hit my quota?
I love that. The idea of, because in sales, everybody, I spent my life talking about, how did you perform last year? How did you perform last quarter? No one's ever looking past 12 months, really. It's not something that people talk about. And so you're in this environment where everything's focused towards the immediate. And so I think, and even when you do, yearly reviews or goal setting exercises, it's always around, okay, so you come into the new year, perfect time right now. People will be sitting down in January saying, what do you want to achieve this year? No one's sitting down and saying, next 5 to 10 years, where do you want to be in life? I just don't see that happening. And I know that I've not done that. It's not something, not that I want to dwell for the whole chat around kind of the age profile, because I don't think it's not necessarily the point, but I think it is harder when you're earlier in your career to be able to see that far ahead. Certainly from talking to people in my network, somebody who's only a few years into their career might find it quite hard to be able to go, well, in 10 years, I really want to be here, and here. It becomes easier, I think, as you get a bit older. But I just don't think anyone's talking no one's talking in those kind of year chunks. It's all 1 year, quarter, half year. Do you agree?
Yes, I understand exactly what you're saying. Sales is a unique career path where it's pretty much the only job where your performance is there on a scoreboard. You've got a number, hit that number. If you hit that number, you're doing your job, great, you keep your job, you're a high performer, and then everything else around it is how you build your brand and take yourself towards wherever you want to be. A lot of other jobs, it's subjective, there's ambiguity. Was it your performance? It's someone else. So they look at the behaviors, they look at the potential. But in sales, it's often black and white. And I'm sure you've seen it where you know that person is an elite level salesperson, but they've been in the wrong company, they've been given the wrong patch, something else has happened, it's been completely outside, COVID again. Think of all the elite sellers that were selling into the travel and tourism industry. Nobody's hitting quota, are they? There's no planes taking off. Everything's been grounded. My holiday was cancelled. If you had a holiday, it was cancelled. Yeah. So it is really difficult for salesperson people, first of all, but then equally, yes, it's so short term. We run on these annual cycles of hit your target, great, that's in the past, now go again. And where I really come in and why I realised I had a role and a responsibility to play is that there's lots of great leaders out there, brilliant first line managers, brilliant sales directors, but equally they are under such short-term pressure, and they've never had more data, tools, admin, responsibility to manage politics and fire drills that come down from the top. They simply don't have the time to sit down for an hour with their account exec and say, hey, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? I know that 99.9% of them want to do that, but they just can't because of their pressure. So I really empathise with them. I don't criticise them at all. But that's where I realised when I thought about going down this path and how I'd mentored and helped other people when I was in the corporate world is people need that support to visualise where they could get to, set the goal, create the game plan, develop the systems to get there, and then ultimately have people like me, but not just me, guides around them, mentors, coaches, sponsors, to help them get there and think longer term and ensure you are still hitting those shorter term goals as part of it.
It's the balance, isn't it?
Or be clear that you actually want to achieve those short term goals. Does it actually matter? Are you working on the right short term goal that's going to start moving you towards that horizon that you want to get towards?
I think it makes that makes a lot of sense, and I don't know the answer to that. We're not trying to find the answer necessarily today, but you're right. Leaders that I speak to, they would like to have those conversations, but it's just time. It's just especially, and not especially actually. I mean, I can only speak really for kind of more the kind of size and profile of the company that we typically recruit for. They're scaling fast. They're looking to grow. No one's got a second to think about that AE and what they want to do in 5 years' time. They're making sure that AE is going to be able to hit the number that they need to hit. When you do this, when you go through the process of working with somebody new and maybe get into that conversation of what does the next 5 to 10 years look like, is there anything that consistently comes up that you find is really surprising?
What I find surprising is it's never just about the money. It's never just about the promotion. It's never just about becoming a CRO, a CEO. These sort of initial goals that people come to me with, there's always something driving it, behind it. And it's often either something they want to fulfill for themselves, or they want to prove something or create something for people that really matter. And that's why with anyone I work with, and when I've spoken on a few different webinars, I talk about an exercise I run, and this is in the book as well. In the very first session with any of my clients is we create their big personal vision. And this is an adaptation of a methodology that Amazon uses to create new products and new businesses. It's famous. They talk about the working backwards methodology, press release and frequently asked questions, where Jeff Bezos said all these other organizations are getting it wrong. They build something and then they start doing the marketing and they write the press release and then hope everyone will buy it. Well, actually, we transport ourselves into the future. What problem are we solving? What experience are we creating? Why would this person buy this product? What would this product mean and change in their lives? And what would they say about it? So I've adapted the working backwards methodology to help my clients create what we call their email from their future self, which is not just about their sales career, it's about everything in terms of the big milestones that they'll hit. And we keep that really focused, because if we go for everything, it's just, a vision without that focus is just chaos, and we run off in lots of different directions. But not only those achievements that they want to hit over 5, more likely 10 years, but how do they want to do it? And what do they want the people that really matter in their lives to say about them? What do they want their kids to say about them? What do they want their best friend to say about them? What do they want their future sales director or their future founder, board, whoever it is, to say about them? And we create this big vision in that format, and we summarize it and we storyfy it so it can be printed out on one sheet of A4 and live on the wall, live on the desk of that client, so that when they need that inspiration, why am I making this difficult call? Why am I getting up at 5 a.m. to do this workout? Why am I going for this job? Does it align to my vision? This is my big purpose and what I'm going for. And we always start there. And it's fascinating how it starts off with, I want to get to President's Club, to then fundamentally be about, I want to actually get out of technology sales because I want to launch a not-for-profit for a cause that is really dear and close to my heart. That's where I want to be in 10 years' time. So what that enables us to do when you talk about that short-termism is, okay, hitting that quota, getting to President's Club, might be a really positive step towards that vision. But how you are going to do it and the skills you're going to develop to get to where you want to be long term, you can start now. And I truly believe that I did this almost subconsciously as an AE, where because I thought I was on this like one-way train to become like, I looked up at Mike Norris on the sales kickoff doing these inspiring keynote presentations and his famous entrances for when he comes on stage, which people can tell you about at Computer Centre, just brilliant. I think they've got their sales kickoff coming up soon. But I was on this one-way train, and the leader I wanted to be was that coaching style, empathetic, raised, all boats rise, a rising tide lifts all boats type leader. So even though I was, an AE, I was an individual contributor working with big A teams, campaign teams on mega deals, I was always thinking about being a leader. Therefore, it wasn't just about me. Who can I bring into my team? How can I enable them and support them? And I effectively became a coach as an AE before it became my full-time occupation. And that was because I had a vision of being the CEO, being that inspirational leader. It was only that turning point that I mentioned right at the beginning of this conversation that tweaked what I was going to do. But the changes and the developments and the strengths that I doubled down on, they were the same. I'd already started to put those building blocks in place. And I think that potentially answers your question about you can aim for the North Star, but you can absolutely kill it in the day job. And that's what my clients are doing. They've got big visions for their future, but they're going from their first conversation with me saying, I'm fearful for my job here. If I don't win or retain this client, I'm out, to doubling the size of the deal, closing it early, becoming number one, getting a round of applause on the stage, but then their mindset is, I'm just getting started. Like this is one stepping stone on my path to something massive. And that's what's been so inspiring for me and reassuring that this is what I'm meant to be doing. It's a lot of people think I'm mad. Why walk away from the lucrative game of technology sales? Well, what I get from this and get from the people that I work with it just counts for so much more. It's incredible.
It just comes through in everything you do, though, Aaron. It's not. I think that you can. People see that, in a world where, like you say, there's so much content, that there's so much information and noise out there. I mean, just take LinkedIn as one platform. It's obviously a platform that you and I use a lot, and then most people within our world use a lot in different ways. So, but I think that finding people who are doing things with true authenticity, and everyone talks about being authentic, but you can just tell. I think you can just tell people who are doing it for the right reasons and who are there to support. And of course, everyone wants to. Part of this is creating the career you want. It is creating the wealth that you want. That's not a bad thing, but it's getting the balance right. If I were an AE today, and this links into what I've just said really well, I think, if I were an AE today and I thought to myself, I'm at a point, I think I might need a coach, or maybe I'm even before that, but there's something that's not working, or I'm at a point where I'm blocked, or whatever the thing is, I'm going to go and try and find some help for this. And I think, okay, maybe I do need a coach. There are more and more people coaching, and it's becoming and I've covered that in other podcasts which I think is a great thing, because I think a lot of businesses and teams talk around, I mentioned it, high performance is a very commonly used word, but actually more often than not, when you dig into teams and individuals, they're trying to create a high performance environment without actually any of the building blocks to create a high performance culture. But if I'm an AE and I'm looking for a coach and I'm going to talk to people to qualify the coach that's going to be right for me. In your view, what's the thing that they should really be looking for in that coach? What's the thing that I need to look? Because the danger, I think, is that you go and do this and you find somebody that's not right for you, and you actually do it for a period of time, it doesn't work, and then actually you're back to square one and you do it again. So yeah, if you're going to go down this route of finding a coach and I'm an AE, what do I look for?
The most important thing is the connection with the coach. I'm a one-person business, so I can't coach everybody in the world. I need to find the people that I can truly help, connect with, get them to where they want to be, which is often, as I mentioned, untapping the potential, helping them break through. Just like you in the recruitment world, where you're trying to place a leader, an AE, into an organization and into a role that's going to work for everyone. It's exactly the same. It's creating that powerful, that mutually beneficial relationship. And just in the same way with finding a job, the listing on the website or the job posting on LinkedIn doesn't tell that candidate that is the right company, the right leader, the right culture, the right product for them to go and work with and sell. And the same applies for if you are thinking about, well, first of all, if you're thinking about coaching, really challenge yourself. Why do you think a coach is the answer to your problem?
Yeah.
If you can look yourself in the mirror and you truly believe that is the right answer, then the next step is you should have conversations with coaches, and don't just jump into bed with the first one that you speak with because they've got a great reputation or the most followers on LinkedIn. Just like a job, you should really do your discovery and your due diligence. Speak with them. They shouldn't be selling to you. They should be coaching you from the off, even before you've spent a penny with them. And if you don't feel a connection, you don't start to think differently, and you don't change through those initial interactions, then they're probably not the right coach for you. I always say when I'm talking to potential clients, future clients, people in the industry, that it's like buying a house. If there's a but, I'm not the right coach for you. It's either a hell yeah or it's a no, because there's no hell maybes. And that's okay. I've talked with people. I give you an example. I had a prospect that came to me inbound. I've just joined Oracle. I really want some coaching so I can thrive in this new enterprise AE role that I've got, because this is a step up for me. And we had the conversation about all the things he wanted to achieve. And I was like, have you heard of Jamal Raymer? He's like, who's Jamal Raymer? So Jamal Raymer is the author of a book called Mega Deal Secrets. But his mega deals, and he's done some huge deals, were all at Oracle. And he's now a coach, and he has a blueprint, masterclass, all these different levels of value and programs and coaching that you can get involved in. It absolutely hits the nail on the head of what this person needed. So I said, before you invest any more time in talking to me after this first call, go and check out Jamal. And I'm waiting to hear the feedback from that. We haven't had a second call. So if I was a betting man, he signed himself up to the Mega Deal Masterclass. And that's okay, because there's plenty of pie to go around. There's millions of salespeople in the world. I think it's 11 million salespeople in the world. So that doesn't, empty my pipeline of future prospects. But it fundamentally could change that person's fortunes. And I think the experience where I helped guide them towards the right action for them to take, that at some point somebody else is going to come to them and say, I've got a problem, but I don't know what I should do. And this individual that I've just told the story about will say, go and have a chat with Aaron. He'll have a chat with you. And if he's right to help you, he will tell you exactly why he's right to help you. But if not, he will point you in the right direction. And I think there's a lesson here for salespeople as well. I have a coach. I've worked with lots of different coaches. When I was an AE, when I initially thought about starting a business, when I launched the business, through growing the business. And I also have fitness coaches. So I invest in myself. I see that value. But one of my coaches, Justin Michael, who is a sales coach, he's Mr. Outbound, he's Salesborg, he's an amazing individual. And he introduced me to a consultant, a thought leader called Jay Abraham, who he's been around for years. And he has this mentality of, everyone talks about trusted advisor, become a trusted advisor. But he takes it up to the next level, where you want to become your customer's most trusted advisor. And how you do that is you serve and help all of your customers and future customers in any way you can, even if that means pointing them in a direction that's different to providing you with revenue. Because what that does is, over time and through these interactions, you build trust, you build trust, you build trust. And when they don't know who to turn to, they turn to you. Lloyd is that person that, if I don't know the answer to this problem or what I should do, he's going to give me strong, customer-obsessed advice. And as I think we've mentioned already, eventually, or when the time's right, the person's right, the problem's right, when you are that person and you say, I can help you, the trust you have and the weight that opinion and that recommendation carries versus, yeah, of course I'm the answer to your problem, is like 100 times more. And I think if AEs had that mentality, it'd be so much more successful. I've had it before when I've felt that somebody is trying to close me, even though I know it's wrong. And the more they try and close and the more they try and convince me, the further away I get.
Yep.
But when somebody cares and helps me, I might not invest in their coaching today, but I go back. Or I don't buy their product or that car at that point in time, but I trust that sales advisor. I go back to them for a recommendation.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I love that term, the most trusted advisor, because yeah, you're right. There's a lot of everyone talks about trusted advisors, but really, yeah, you want to be the most. I love that. Last question before we finish, because we've already we've absolutely smashed through it through well over an hour. With these are never challenging. For you personally, you had that point in your life, in your career, where you wanted to make a change and do something different. And I just want to flip this on its head for maybe, we've talked a lot about coaching and AEs, but there will be other people who listen to this who maybe are inspired to do what you've done, and go in that direction. And there are, I see more and more people doing it. But for you, what's been the biggest benefit of doing it that you didn't expect to be a benefit?
Benefit to me? Or
yeah, for you personally.
For me personally, the benefit is I get to live a role and a world that I enjoyed. But just like when I mentioned wanting, when I was a young graduate, to go into these consultancies and work in all these different organizations, one day I'm working on a cybersecurity 8-figure SaaS deal, or I'm in the corner. The box is in the ring and I'm in the corner supporting them.
I like that analogy. Okay.
And then the next day I'm helping a client land their dream job at a new organization, and they're moving their family from one part of the United States to another. And then the next day I'm helping a chief commercial officer build out their new business development function. And then on another day, we're in deep emotional level conversations with someone that's really struggling from a confidence perspective and trying to find their style. And that's what's the most biggest benefit for me, is that I feel like I've never worked on more important problems. I'm always working on the most important thing for that person whether that be a corporate that's paying me and I'm working for the leader, it's their number one priority, which is why they're investing, or that individual. I always thought that the individuals would pay for coaching through their companies and expense it. Easily over 90% of my clients pay out of their own money because they are ready to change, they are invested, they are accountable, and they come to the table. If we make this agreement that they're going all in, I'm going all in, they can guarantee my investment, they're putting their investment in. The biggest benefit is I've seen how much people can change and what people can achieve, which I just don't think I ever would have got in the corporate world. I get that every day, that's the greatest benefit for me. And then linking it again to building the life. My family, my health and my fitness, building a career and being ambitious is so important to me that I have control over it now. I can be anywhere in the world. I can work early in the mornings, I can work late at night, so I can be global. That freedom is something that's really, really important to me, especially at this stage of my life. And I think that's one of the reasons that, as you mentioned, others are exploring what else to corporate sales. And it doesn't have to be coaching.
Completely.
But like yourself, why can't I set up my own business? Why can't I be a coach? Why can't I traverse from corporate sales into a non-profit? It gives you that freedom. And everyone should have that freedom to think big. That's an Amazon leadership principle, but it's so important. Just if you're thinking big, try again. What really would make you happy? And there's nothing to stop you at least experimenting, at least exploring it in the first instance and really deciding whether you want to do it or not.
It's a great answer, and it's a great way to finish up the conversation. I think I'm always really looking forward to these conversations. I get to, as my career develops, as our business develops, you get to meet through purposeful networking. I think is a term that I've got more and more comfortable with. Some incredibly interesting people, and I think there's just personally it's even better sometimes when you meet people who really are aligned in terms of the same way of thinking. It helps sometimes when you're at similar stages of life or career because you can see alignment. So that's always going to be easier for me to be able to listen to you talking when we spoke originally for it to really resonate. But I think what's interesting, and we've hopefully tried to cover today, is that there are different stages, different environments, different challenges that exist for everybody. And actually the finding a coach and having a coach is not just about being at one point. It could be at various different points with various different challenges. So thank you for your time. I think we've covered loads. There's so much there, and I hope I hope you've enjoyed it, Aaron. I definitely have, and I hope the people listening do as well.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And feels like we could do it all over again for another hour.
We definitely will. I always say this, and I think I need to do kind of episode 2 a year from now to kind of go back, and it's something I'll look into that. For now, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's listened.
Yes, thank you very much. Take care.